Picture this, deep beneath the earth in China's Shaanxi province, an entire army lies in wait not of flesh and blood, but of clay. Thousands of life-sized soldiers, each with unique faces, standing in perfect formation, as if frozen in time. This is the Terracotta Army, one of the most jaw-dropping archaeological discoveries of all time. But here's the question that's baffled historians for decades. Why would Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first ruler to unite China, go to such extraordinary lengths to create an underground legion of clay warriors? What secrets lie buried with them? The sheer scale of this hidden army is staggering. Imagine crafting over 8,000 soldiers, hundreds of chariots, and even horses, each one painstakingly detailed, no two faces alike. It's a project that would have taken decades and the labor of countless artisans, and yet they weren't meant for the living world. These warriors were sealed away in the darkness, guarding something far more mysterious, the Emperor's tomb. But was this army meant to protect him in the afterlife, or was there something even deeper at play? Some historians believe the Terracotta Army was more than just a show of power. It might have been a desperate attempt to cheat death itself. This is a story that blurs the line between history and legend. Emperor Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with immortality, sending explorers to find mythical elixirs and even consuming mercury in his pursuit of eternal life. Could the Terracotta Army have been part of that obsession, a way to ensure his rule continued beyond the grave? Or was it a political statement, a symbol of his unmatched authority meant to intimidate even in death? Today, as archaeologists slowly uncover more clues, the theories grow wilder and more fascinating. From spiritual beliefs to psychological warfare, the truth behind these silent sentinels is anything but simple. So let's dig deeper, because the secrets of the Terracotta Army aren't just about the past. They're a window into the mind of one of history's most enigmatic rulers. In 1974, a group of farmers digging a well in China's Shaanxi province struck something far more extraordinary than water, a life-sized clay head staring back at them from the earth. At first, they thought it might be an ancient statue, perhaps just a lone relic. But as they kept digging, more fragments emerged: shoulders, arms, torsos, until it became clear they'd stumbled onto something unimaginable. An entire buried army, frozen in time for over 2,000 years. Word spread quickly, and when archaeologists arrived, they realized this wasn't just a handful of statues. It was the tip of an empire-sized iceberg. The scale of the find was beyond anything they'd anticipated. Chamber after chamber revealed row upon row of terracotta warriors, each one unique, with intricate armor, weapons, and expressions so detailed they seemed to capture real individuals. Some stood ready for battle, others kneeled with crossbows, and chariots pulled by terracotta horses hinted at a military force designed for eternity. The farmers had accidentally uncovered what would soon be recognized as one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, the hidden army of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. As excavations expanded, the world took notice. By 1987, the site earned UNESCO World Heritage status, sealing its place as a marvel of human history. But even now, decades later, the work is far from over. Archaeologists estimate less than 1% of the emperor's vast necropolis has been fully explored. New pits are still being uncovered, each revealing fresh mysteries, like the recent discovery of acrobats and bureaucrats among the warriors, suggesting the emperor's afterlife court was meant to be as vibrant as his real one. Every shovel of dirt holds the potential to rewrite what we know about ancient China, and all of it started with a farmer's well and a single, startled glance into the past. Emperor Qin Shi Huang wasn't just a ruler. He was a man haunted by the one enemy even he couldn't conquer: death. From the moment he unified China in 221 BC, his reign became a race against time, a desperate scramble to cheat mortality at any cost. Ancient texts describe how he sent expeditions to distant mountains and islands, demanding alchemists bring back the mythical elixir of life. He consumed potions laced with mercury, believing they'd grant him eternal youth. Ironically, they may have hastened his end. But his most astonishing bid for immortality lies underground. The Terracotta Army standing guard over a tomb so vast, so intricate, it's as if he tried to take his entire empire with him into the afterlife. The tomb itself remains sealed, protected by booby traps and rivers of liquid mercury, a metal the emperor believed held mystical properties. Historical records describe ceilings inlaid with pearls to mimic the night sky and landscapes sculpted from bronze, all surrounding Qin's final resting place. But why bury an army? Some scholars argue the clay warriors were more than mere symbols. In Qin's time, it was common for rulers to be buried with real servants and soldiers, sacrificed to serve them in death. The Terracotta Army might have been a revolutionary compromise, a way to satisfy tradition without spilling blood, yet still ensure the emperor had an unstoppable force at his command beyond the grave. Others see darker symbolism. Qin's reign was built on conquest and fear. The Terracotta Army, frozen in battle formation, could have been a final warning to his enemies. Even in death, his power was unchallenged. Every detail, from the individualized faces to the precise arrangement of troops, suggests this wasn't just a funeral display. It was a statement, and perhaps for a man who spent his life chasing permanence, the army was the ultimate illusion of control. If he couldn't live forever, he could at least make sure his legacy and his dominance would never fade. Yet the most haunting question remains: what waits inside that untouched tomb? Ground-penetrating radar has revealed a labyrinth of chambers, possibly containing treasures, texts, or even the emperor's preserved body. But until archaeologists dare to open it, we're left with clues and speculation. The Terracotta Army is more than a marvel of ancient art. It's the fingerprint of a ruler who refused to accept his own mortality. And as long as his tomb stays closed, Qin Shi Huang gets the last word. His secrets, like his warriors, remain standing guard. Standing in the excavated pits of the Terracotta Army today, the sheer numbers alone are enough to take your breath away. Picture row after row of clay soldiers stretching farther than the eye can see, an estimated 8,000 warriors, each one painstakingly crafted with its own distinct personality. But it's not just soldiers. The scale of this underground empire includes 130 chariots, 520 horses, and even non-military figures like acrobats, musicians, and government officials, all frozen in time. This wasn't just an army, it was an entire society, meticulously recreated in clay to serve the emperor in the afterlife. What's truly remarkable is the level of detail. These aren't cookie-cutter duplicates. The soldiers vary in height, with generals towering over infantrymen, some standing as tall as 6.5 feet. Their uniforms tell a story of rank and roll: armor scales for heavy infantry, flowing robes for officers, even intricate braids marking cavalrymen. But it's their faces that truly astonish. Each one is unique, with different hairstyles, expressions, even subtle variations in ear shapes and wrinkles. Archaeologists believe they may have been modeled after real soldiers in Qin's army, turning these clay figures into an eternal roster of his most loyal followers. The craftsmanship goes beyond mere artistry. These were functional warriors, once armed with real weapons: bronze spears, crossbows, and swords still sharp enough to draw blood after 2 millennia. Some chariots were even outfitted with working parts like wooden wheels and leather reins, though time has long since turned them to dust. And then there are the surprises, like the recently discovered acrobats frozen mid-performance, suggesting the emperor's afterlife was meant to include entertainment as well as protection. But why such diversity? Some historians think this was Qin's way of ensuring his afterlife mirrored his real-world dominance. Just as he ruled over every aspect of living China, from the battlefield to the bureaucracy, his tomb complex reflected that same control. The presence of officials and entertainers hints at a belief that death wasn't an end, but a continuation of his empire under different rules. Every sculpted figure, whether a stern general or a laughing acrobat, was a piece of that grand design. And yet, for all we've uncovered, there's still so much we don't know. Recent excavations have revealed pits filled with figures we never expected, like exotic birds and rare animals, suggesting the emperor's afterlife zoo was just as important as his army. With each new discovery, the Terracotta Army becomes less of a military display and more of a snapshot of an entire civilization preserved in clay. It's a reminder that Qin Shi Huang didn't just want an army guarding his tomb. He wanted his whole world to follow him into eternity. Stepping into the pits where the Terracotta Army stands, you're not just looking at rows of statues, you're witnessing the exact battle formations that made Emperor Qin's real-life armies unstoppable. The vanguard of crossbowmen crouched at the front, their weapons once loaded and ready. Behind them, waves of infantry with spears and shields poised to advance. And further back, chariots flanked by cavalry, positioned like the hammer waiting to strike the anvil. This isn't a random arrangement. Every figure's placement mirrors the ruthless efficiency of Qin's conquests, as if the emperor's strategists designed an eternal battlefield underground. Historical records describe how Qin's real armies overwhelmed rivals with precision tactics, crossbow volleys softening enemy lines before infantry charged, chariots exploiting gaps to break formations. The terracotta pits recreate this exact blueprint. Even the spacing between soldiers reflects real combat intervals, close enough to form shields but with room to swing weapons. Archaeologists have noted how the front-line archers lack armor. Just as real skirmishers would, sacrificing protection for mobility. Meanwhile, officers stand slightly apart, their more ornate uniforms making them visible rallying points, a detail pulled straight from ancient military manuals. But there's a twist. Some pits deviate from textbook formations, clustering specialists like charioteers in ways that suggest ritual symbolism. One theory posits these arrangements weren't just tactical, they were cosmic. Qin saw himself as the axis between heaven and earth, and his clay army may have mirrored constellations or sacred patterns. The northern pits, for instance, face the emperor's tomb like sentinels guarding the gates of the afterlife, hinting at beliefs deeper than warfare. Yet the most chilling detail, many warriors' hands are clenched around missing weapons. Excavations unearthed thousands of bronze arrowheads, swords still sharp enough to cut, even remnants of wooden crossbows, proof these weren't ceremonial props. This was a functional arsenal meant to arm the emperor's spectral battalion. Whether intended to fight demons, rival spirits, or simply proclaim his undying authority, the message is clear. Qin's afterlife would be ruled by the same iron discipline that forged his empire. And that's what makes these pits so extraordinary. They blur the line between military strategy and spiritual doctrine. While the formations echo real battles, their permanence frozen mid-action, never to advance or retreat, suggests something more profound. This wasn't just an army, it was the emperor's attempt to bend death itself to his will, ensuring eternity marched to the same drumbeat as his reign. Every soldier, every weapon, every tactical detail whispers the same obsession: control. Even in a realm no living ruler could conquer. Beneath the silent ranks of the Terracotta Army lies something even more extraordinary: Emperor Qin's mausoleum, a sprawling underground palace rumored to rival the grandest structures of the living world. While the warriors stand guard in their pits, the real treasure and the real mystery waits a mile to the west, buried beneath a man-made mound that's remained untouched for over 2,000 years. Ground-penetrating radar has peeled back the layers of earth to reveal a labyrinth of chambers, corridors, and even rivers of liquid mercury flowing through this subterranean kingdom. The Terracotta Army isn't just a standalone marvel, it's the outermost layer of a deathscape designed to mirror Qin's earthly dominion. Historical records describe the tomb as a microcosm of the empire, with bronze mountains, jeweled stars, and palaces where the emperor's spirit could rule forever. But what connects it to the clay soldiers? These warriors weren't merely decorative, they were positioned strategically, their pits forming a defensive perimeter around the tomb's eastern flank, the direction from which Qin's enemies once came. It's as if he expected battles in the afterlife and stationed his eternal army to fight them. The technology behind this underground complex is as shocking as its scale. Ancient texts mention crossbow traps rigged to fire at intruders, while modern scans confirm vast quantities of mercury, enough to create toxic rivers that may have symbolized the mythical waters of immortality. Some scholars believe the mercury was also a practical deterrent, its fumes acting as a lethal barrier against tomb raiders. And then there's the tomb itself, a sealed chamber at the heart of the complex, its contents still unknown. Could it hold Qin's body, preserved like the later emperors of China, or priceless artifacts like the imperial seal that symbolized his authority? The most compelling theory, though, ties the Terracotta Army directly to Qin's vision of the afterlife. In his time, people believed the dead needed earthly possessions to sustain them in the spirit world, but Qin took it further. By burying an entire army, along with officials, entertainers, and even animals, he wasn't just preparing for death. He was recreating the hierarchy of his empire, ensuring every role, from soldier to bureaucrat, would still serve him. The Terracotta Army wasn't just protection, it was the foundation of an afterlife bureaucracy, a way to extend his rule beyond mortality. Yet for all our technology, we may never see the tomb's interior. Chinese authorities have resisted excavation, citing preservation concerns and respect for the dead. The mercury levels alone make it hazardous, and the risk of damaging irreplaceable artifacts is too high. So the Terracotta Army remains both a revelation and a riddle, a visible piece of a puzzle we can't fully solve. They stand as silent sentinels, guarding not just a tomb but the boundary between history and mystery. And until that underground palace is opened, their true purpose may stay as buried as the emperor they were meant to serve. The warriors' stoic faces and battle-ready stances raise a chilling possibility. Were they stationed not just to guard the emperor's tomb, but to defend against something far more sinister? Ancient Chinese beliefs painted the afterlife as a perilous realm, where the spirits of the dead could be vulnerable to vengeful forces. Qin Shi Huang had spent his life conquering rival states, leaving countless enemies in his wake. What if those slain warriors and deposed rulers sought retribution in the spirit world? The Terracotta Army, positioned eastward, the very direction his foes once came from, might have been a supernatural defense force, standing between the emperor and the wrath of those he'd defeated. But there's another layer to this theory. Chinese folklore spoke of hungry ghosts and malevolent spirits who could torment the dead. Elaborate burial rituals often included offerings to appease such entities. The sheer number of clay soldiers suggests an almost paranoid level of protection, as if Qin feared an entire spectral army might descend upon him. Intriguingly, some warriors face outward, their weapons angled not toward the tomb but away from it, as though anticipating an external threat. Even their weapons held real-world significance. Bronze, believed to repel evil spirits, made their swords and arrowheads both practical and mystical tools. Yet not all scholars agree. Some argue the army's purpose wasn't defensive at all, but theatrical, a display of dominance meant to intimidate rival spirits rather than fight them. Imagine the message sent to deceased kings and generals. Even in death, Qin commanded an unbeatable force. This interpretation aligns with the emperor's well-documented ego. His tomb complex wasn't hidden, it was a monument meant to awe. The presence of officials and entertainers alongside soldiers supports this idea. Qin wasn't just preparing for war in the afterlife. He was staging an eternal court, ensuring every spirit knew his authority remained unchallenged. The debate hinges on conflicting views of ancient Chinese spirituality. Some texts describe the underworld as a bureaucratic mirror of the living world, where status and paperwork mattered as much as brute strength. If true, the Terracotta Army might have served as both military might and administrative muscle, enforcing Qin's rule in a realm governed by celestial laws. Other records, however, depict the afterlife as a chaotic battleground, a place where only the strongest spirits thrived. The army's meticulous formations could reflect Qin's attempt to impose order on that chaos, replicating the discipline that let him conquer the living world. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the warrior's construction itself. Each figure was fired in sections, then assembled, a metaphor for the unity Qin imposed on China. But cracks run through many statues repaired over centuries by archaeologists. It's impossible not to wonder, did the emperor's fear of fragmentation extend beyond his empire into the afterlife? The Terracotta Army, whole and unyielding, may have been his ultimate insurance against dissolution both of his body and his legacy. Whether facing vengeful spirits or rival kings, these clay sentinels weren't merely art. They were a declaration: in life or death, Qin Shi Huang would never surrender. Each terracotta warrior began as nothing more than earth, local clay from the banks of the nearby Wai River, mixed with quartz and sand to prevent cracking. But what transformed these humble materials into masterpieces was a process so advanced it rivals modern assembly lines. Artisans worked in specialized workshops, each team handling a single step, molding legs in one area, torsos in another, heads in yet another. Like an ancient version of mass production, components were standardized yet customizable. Think of it as the world's first modular sculpture system. Horses' legs were hollow to support their weight, while soldiers' feet were solid for stability. Every piece was fired in kilns reaching temperatures over 1,000 degrees Celsius, a feat requiring precise control to prevent explosions. The real shock comes when you examine the warriors up close. Originally, they weren't the muted clay we see today. Traces of pigment reveal they were once painted in vibrant hues: sapphire headbands, emerald armor, even pink fingernails. The lacquer base applied before painting reacted with buried moisture over centuries, causing most colors to flake away upon exposure. But forensic techniques have reconstructed their original brilliance: vermilion robes for officers, indigo detailing on armor straps, even synthetic purple imported from distant regions. These weren't just statues, they were a riot of color meant to dazzle in the afterlife. Behind this artistry lies a staggering human cost. Historians estimate 700,000 laborers toiled for nearly 4 decades: convicts, peasants, and craftsmen conscripted from across the empire. Work quotas were brutal. Archaeologists have uncovered bones in mass graves near the site, some showing signs of malnutrition or repetitive stress injuries. But there's also evidence of remarkable skill. Fingerprints pressed into clay match across different warriors, suggesting individual artisans left their mark. Some heads were even signed, names like Gong or Xiang scratched into the clay, a rare glimpse of the hands behind the empire's most ambitious project. The logistics alone boggled the mind. Transporting thousands of life-sized figures required carts and barges, each soldier weighing up to 400 pounds. Kilns had to operate year-round, fed by entire forests of timber, and the paint, oh, the paint, cinnabar from the south, azurite from the east, malachite ground into powder. Each pigment represented trade networks spanning thousands of miles. This wasn't just tomb decoration, it was the full industrial might of a unified China, marshaled to serve one man's vision of eternity. Yet for all their uniformity, each warrior bears quirks that humanize them. One soldier's sash is slightly askew, another's brow furrowed as if mid-battle. These imperfections suggest the artisans, perhaps weary, perhaps rebellious, slipped fragments of individuality into their work. It's an irony Qin might have hated. In seeking eternal control, he created 8,000 silent witnesses to the messy, brilliant humanity he tried to regiment. The Terracotta Army stands not just as a monument to power, but to the countless unnamed hands who shaped immortality from mud and fire. Look closely at the fists of the terracotta warriors, and you'll notice something unsettling. Most of them clutch empty air. Originally, these hands gripped real weapons, razor-sharp bronze swords, 18-foot spears, even crossbows loaded with deadly precision. But within years of Emperor Qin's burial, grave robbers stripped the pits clean, leaving behind only faint traces of their plunder. Wooden spear shafts long rotted away, telltale grooves in the clay fingers where blades once rested. What happened to those weapons? Some likely ended up reforged for new battles during the civil wars that erupted after Qin's dynasty collapsed. Others may have been melted down for coinage or tools, their military purpose erased by time. Yet the looters missed or ignored certain treasures. Thousands of bronze arrowheads still litter the pits, piled in clusters where archers once stood. These weren't crude projectiles, they were engineered for maximum lethality. Each arrowhead's three-bladed design ensured devastating wounds, while standardized measurements within millimeters of each other reveal Qin's obsession with uniformity. Even the crossbow triggers, made of intricate interlocking bronze pieces, show machining precision that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. These surviving artifacts prove the Terracotta Army wasn't just a symbolic display. It was armed with cutting-edge technology, designed to function as a real fighting force in whatever afterlife awaited. The weapons also hint at a darker secret. Chemical analysis shows the bronze alloy contained trace amounts of lead, not for structural strength, but possibly for toxicity. Ancient Chinese texts mention poisoning arrowheads, and Qin's artisans may have weaponized metallurgy itself. Even more chilling are the sword blades, some still bearing their original edge after 2 millennia. Their surfaces show chromium oxide traces, an anti-rust technique lost after the Qin dynasty and only rediscovered in the 20th century. This wasn't just superior craftsmanship, it was military innovation meant to last forever. But why equip clay soldiers with functional arms? Some scholars argue it was about spiritual potency, that real weapons held more power in the afterlife than replicas. Others believe the armory was insurance against grave robbers, a deterrent meant to intimidate would-be thieves with the threat of supernatural retribution. After all, disturbing an emperor's eternal guard carried more than legal consequences. It risked inviting curses from the spirit world. The missing weapons mystery ultimately underscores a paradox. Qin built his army to project invincibility, yet even he couldn't protect his own tomb from human greed. Those empty fists stand as silent witnesses to history's greatest heist, one that stripped the warriors of their purpose but left behind enough clues to marvel at the ambition behind their creation. The real tragedy: we'll never know if the looters feared the clay soldiers coming to life as they stole their swords, or if they simply saw bronze too valuable to leave buried. Either way, the vanished arsenal leaves us with a haunting question. What kind of emperor buries an army meant to fight battles no living person could see? Emperor Qin Shi Huang didn't just build an army, he encoded an entire philosophy into clay. The rigid formations of the terracotta warriors mirror the legalist principles that defined his rule: absolute control, harsh discipline, and the subjugation of individual will to state power. Every soldier stands in perfect rank, their faces unique yet their purpose identical, a visual manifesto of legalism's core belief that order must be imposed from above. But beneath this facade of uniformity lies a deeper tension. Just decades before Qin's reign, Confucian ideals emphasized harmony through moral virtue, not force. The Terracotta Army straddles both worlds. Its craftsmanship honors Confucian respect for skilled labor, while its existence proclaims legalism's obsession with control. This duality reflects China's philosophical crossroads, where one man's vision overruled centuries of tradition. The army's symbolism becomes even more striking when contrasted with older burial practices. Centuries before Qin, the Shang dynasty entombed real human servants, soldiers, even charioteers to serve their rulers in death. Mass graves at Yingsu reveal skeletons still clutching ceremonial weapons, their lives cut short for royal vanity. Qin's terracotta substitutes marked a seismic shift. By replacing flesh with clay, he preserved the ritual's intent while discarding its brutality. Some historians argue this wasn't compassion, but pragmatism. Sacrificing actual soldiers would have depleted his real army, and Qin needed every man alive to crush rebellions. Yet the symbolic gesture resonated. Future dynasties adopted similar practices, burying pottery figures instead of people, a legacy that reshaped Chinese spirituality. But was this progress or just a different kind of tyranny? The Terracotta Army still glorified militarism, its sheer scale echoing Qin's real-world conscription policies that drained villages of men. And while clay spared lives, the laborers who crafted these figures endured their own suffering, forced relocations, grueling quotas, and the ever-present threat of punishment. In a twist of irony, Qin's humane alternative required more collective effort than Shang-era sacrifices, binding thousands in lifelong servitude to his ego. The warriors also reveal a spiritual compromise. Ancient Chinese believed the afterlife required real-world provisions, food, tools, even companions. Earlier tombs contained these items literally. Qin's innovation was substitution, clay horses instead of livestock, bronze weapons rather than steel. This shift suggests evolving beliefs that symbols could hold spiritual weight equal to real objects provided they were crafted with intention. Modern excavations confirm this theory. Some pits contain grain silos filled not with actual millet, but miniature clay replicas, proof that Qin's artisans recreated an entire world in microcosm. Yet for all its symbolism, the army's message was unmistakably material. Its placement, east-facing toward the kingdoms Qin conquered, was no accident. These clay soldiers weren't just guardians, they were propaganda, a permanent reminder of his dominance. Even in death, Qin weaponized philosophy, turning Confucian respect for ritual and legalist love of order into tools of intimidation. The Terracotta Army thus stands at the intersection of belief and power, a monument not just to one man's ambition, but to the ideologies that shaped an empire. Its silent ranks ask us which is more enduring, the control of bodies or the conquest of minds. Could the striking realism of the terracotta warriors owe a debt to faraway Greece? It's a theory that sparked heated debate among historians. Around a century before Qin Shi Huang's reign, Alexander the Great's armies marched to the edges of Central Asia, bringing Hellenistic artistry with them. Some scholars point to the warriors' lifelike proportions, the delicate folds of their armor, the individualized facial features, and see echoes of Greek sculptural techniques. Could knowledge of these styles have trickled east along the Silk Road, reaching Chinese artisans through indirect trade contacts? The timing is tantalizing. Yet this hypothesis stumbles when held up to scrutiny. While Hellenistic statues emphasized idealized beauty, the Terracotta Army celebrates gritty realism, crooked noses, weathered brows, even receding hairline. These aren't gods carved from marble, they're soldiers molded from earth, bearing the marks of hard lives. More damningly, no Greek artifacts from this period have been found anywhere near Qin's capital. The closest parallels lie over 2,000 miles west, with no evidence of cultural exchange bridging that gap. Instead, the warriors' artistry likely grew from China's own rich traditions. Centuries before Qin, the Chu kingdom crafted wooden tomb figures with painted details, while Shang dynasty bronzes show a mastery of human expression. Even Qin's rivals, the Zhou, buried pottery soldiers, albeit cruder ones. What set Qin's artisans apart was scale and ambition, not outside influence. The warriors' construction techniques, layered clay coils, modular assembly, mirror methods used in Chinese pottery for generations. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in their purpose. Greek statues honored athletes and deities. These clay soldiers served a ruler's obsession with control. Their realism wasn't about artistry for its own sake. It was about creating an army so authentic, the boundary between symbol and reality blurred. That distinction captures why the Greek connection feels unsatisfying. The Terracotta Army wasn't born from an aesthetic movement. It was forged by one man's determination to conquer mortality itself, using tools his culture had honed for centuries. The truth may be simpler yet more profound. Sometimes great minds arrive at similar ideas not through contact, but because human ingenuity follows no single path. Here's what's truly baffling: the Terracotta Army, this sprawling monument to imperial power, barely registers in surviving historical texts from the Qin dynasty. Not a single first-hand account from Qin Shi Huang's reign describes its construction. The closest reference comes from Sima Qian, a historian writing a century later, who mentions clay figures in just a few cryptic lines. For a project employing hundreds of thousands and consuming decades of labor, this silence is deafening. So what happened to the records? One theory suggests the army was always meant to be secret, a hidden safeguard for the emperor's afterlife, too sensitive to document. After all, revealing the tomb's defenses could invite grave robbers or rival spirits. But there's a darker possibility: the infamous burning of books and burying of scholars. Campaign under Qin's rule systematically erased texts that didn't glorify his regime. Entire libraries vanished in flames, and with them, perhaps, the very archives that could explain these clay warriors. Consider the Great Wall, another Qin mega-project that dominates historical records. Chronicles detail its construction mile by mile, listing conscripted laborers and conquered territories used as building sites. The contrast is stark. The wall was propaganda, visible proof of Qin's might meant to awe both subjects and enemies, but the Terracotta Army, hidden underground, known only to those who built it. This wasn't a public works project, it was a classified operation on an imperial scale. Even the logistics support this theory. While wall laborers left inscriptions and graffiti, not a single artisan's mark has been found in the warriors' pits beyond a few hidden signatures. The secrecy was airtight, yet Sima Qian's brief mention hints at something even more intriguing. He writes that the emperor feared craftsmen might reveal tomb secrets, so he trapped them inside. If true, it would explain the lack of first-hand accounts, but archaeology complicates this. No mass graves of artisans have been found near the mausoleum. Instead, we've uncovered orderly workshop ruins with pottery molds and half-finished figures, suggesting workers left voluntarily when the project ended. So why the historical blackout? Perhaps because Qin's successors had motive to suppress his legacy. The Han dynasty that followed painted him as a tyrant, downplaying his achievements. What better way to diminish his grandeur than to omit his most audacious creation? The silence extends to broader Qin records too. We know more about the dynasty's tax reforms than its spiritual beliefs, leaving us to guess at the army's religious significance. Compare this to Egypt's pyramids, meticulously documented in hieroglyphs and papyri. The difference speaks volumes. Qin's China was a state obsessed with control, where even history had to serve the emperor's narrative. Those clay soldiers weren't just guarding a tomb, they were standing watch over secrets their creator never wanted revealed. And in that, at least, Qin Shi Huang succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. 2,000 years later, we're still piecing together the truth from fragments and whispers. Beneath the silent ranks of the Terracotta Army, the earth holds traces of something far more ominous: mercury. Not just traces, in fact, soil samples around Qin's unopened tomb show levels of this toxic metal up to 100 times higher than normal. This aligns eerily with ancient historian Sima Qian's description of the tomb's interior. Rivers of mercury simulating the great waters of China's rivers and seas. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as myth, but science now suggests Qin might have taken his obsession with immortality to a terrifying extreme. Imagine a subterranean landscape where shimmering mercury flowed through bronze channels surrounding the emperor's resting place with liquid poison. Was this a symbolic recreation of China's life-giving rivers, or something far more practical, a lethal barrier against both grave robbers and vengeful spirits? The sheer quantity of mercury involved would have been staggering. Modern estimates suggest several tons, enough to fill multiple swimming pools. Where did it come from? Qin's empire controlled mercury mines in Sichuan province, where cinnabar ore was processed into the silvery metal. Ancient alchemists revered mercury for its mystical properties, believing it could grant eternal life. Ironically, the same substance Qin consumed in elixirs, likely contributing to his early death at 49, might now preserve his tomb indefinitely. Mercury's antimicrobial properties could prevent decay, while its vapors would deter even the bravest intruders. But here's the chilling dilemma facing archaeologists. Those same vapors make excavation perilous. Opening the tomb risks unleashing concentrated mercury gas, endangering researchers and potentially damaging irreplaceable artifacts. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a sprawling underground palace with ceilings reinforced by stone beams, but no one knows what traps, mechanical or chemical, might still be active. Sima Qian mentioned mechanized crossbows rigged to fire at intruders, and while these may have degraded, the mercury threat remains potent. Even with modern protective gear, the challenge is unprecedented. What could the tomb reveal about the Terracotta Army's true purpose? Some speculate Qin's body lies preserved at the center, perhaps surrounded by texts or maps hinting at his vision for the afterlife. Others imagine treasures beyond comprehension: jade burial suits, celestial globes, or even early prototypes of inventions lost to history. One tantalizing clue comes from the mercury itself. Its placement may mirror specific rivers or constellations, suggesting the army's formations align with a grand cosmic design. If the tomb's layout replicates Qin's empire, then the warriors weren't just guards, they were geographic markers, eternally securing conquered territories in the spirit world. Yet the greatest revelation might be psychological. Every aspect of the tomb complex, from the mercury rivers to the clay soldiers, reflects a mind consumed by control. Qin didn't just want to survive death, he sought to dominate it, bending the afterlife to the same rigid order he imposed on China. The unopened tomb is his final chess move, a gambit to outwit mortality itself. Until science finds a way to safely breach its defenses, we're left with fragments and speculation. And perhaps that's fitting. For a man who spent his life erasing history to shape his own legacy, the ultimate irony would be his most closely guarded secret staying buried, not by design, but by the very poison meant to protect it. Among the countless theories about the Terracotta Army's purpose, some of the most fascinating stray far from traditional explanations. What if these clay soldiers weren't just an imperial guard or a show of force, but something far more mystical? One fringe hypothesis suggests they acted as spiritual mediators, conduits between the living world and the afterlife. Ancient Chinese beliefs held that the dead needed intermediaries to navigate the spirit realm, and the warrior's lifelike detail, right down to individual wrinkles and fingernails, could have made them perfect vessels for supernatural communication. Perhaps they weren't meant to fight at all, but to serve as a bridge carrying messages or offerings between Qin and the gods. Then there's the ego theory. Qin didn't just unite China, he declared himself its first emperor, a title he invented. The sheer audacity of crafting 8,000 unique faces might reflect more than military precision. It could be the ultimate vanity project, a way to immortalize not just his power, but his very vision of order. Every soldier's posture, every chariot's placement, might have been meticulously designed to reflect his worldview. Some archaeologists point to the army's eastern-facing position, directly toward the lands Qin conquered, as proof this was less about protection and more about proclamation, a permanent, unmissable billboard of his dominance. But the most poetic theory transforms the entire complex into a cosmic map. Ancient Chinese astronomy linked earthly power to celestial patterns, and the army's layout might mirror star constellations or sacred geography. One researcher noticed how the pits align with specific stars in the purple forbidden enclosure, an astrological zone representing the emperor's heavenly counterpart. If true, the warriors could be anchors tethering Qin's spirit to the cosmos itself. Even the mercury rivers in his tomb might symbolize the Milky Way, placing him at the center of a miniature universe. Of course, not all theories hold equal weight. Claims that the army was inspired by extraterrestrials or lost civilizations crumble under scrutiny. There's zero physical evidence of outside influence. But the spiritual mediator idea gains traction from later Han Dynasty texts describing clay figures used in funeral rites and the cosmic map theory. While no Qin-era star charts survive, we know his court astronomers meticulously tracked celestial events, tying his rule to heavenly mandates. The truth likely blends these ideas. Qin was a man who saw himself as both conqueror and cosmic pivot, his reign bridging heaven and earth. His Terracotta Legion may have been military, spiritual, and egotistical all at once, a multi-layered masterpiece designed to secure his legacy in every conceivable realm. After all, why choose one purpose when you're building for eternity? Among the terracotta warriors, 2 bronze chariots stand apart, not just for their dazzling craftsmanship, but for the revolutionary engineering hidden beneath their gilded surfaces. Discovered in 1980 near Qin Shi Huang's tomb mound, these half-scale replicas of imperial carriages weren't mere decorations. They were functional masterpieces designed with working axles, flexible drivetrains, and even shock-absorbing suspensions, technologies centuries ahead of their time. The first chariot, known as the High Chariot, was built for open-air processions, its canopy crafted from a single sheet of bronze so thin it ripples like fabric in sunlight. The second, called the air-conditioned chariot, features enclosed compartments with sliding windows and ventilation grills, a mobile throne room fit for an emperor's ghost. What makes these chariots extraordinary isn't just their luxury, it's their precision. Every component, from the horse's articulated joints to the reine's interlocking rings, was cast using lost wax techniques so advanced modern metallurgists struggle to replicate them. The wheels alone are feats of physics, with staggered spokes to distribute weight and tapered hubs to reduce friction. But the real marvel, the umbrella. Yes, the charioteer's bronze parasol isn't fixed. It rotates 360 degrees and locks at any angle, its base housing a secret compartment likely meant for weapons or ceremonial objects. This wasn't just art, it was micro-engineering disguised as opulence. The symbolism runs even deeper. These chariots mirror real vehicles described in Qin-era texts, the same ones that carried the emperor during his infamous tours of inspection. By burying them, Qin ensured his afterlife court would lack nothing. Yet there's a darker subtext. The chariots faced west toward the setting sun and the land of the dead, while the Terracotta Army faced east toward the living. Together, they formed a spiritual convoy bridging both realms. The message was clear: whether crossing conquered territories or cosmic boundaries, Qin's authority would never stall. Perhaps most telling is what the chariots reveal about Qin's mindset. Unlike the terracotta warriors mass-produced in workshops, these bronzes were one-of-a-kind labors of obsession. Artisans left no fingerprints here. Every surface is polished to perfection, every joint seamless. It's as if the emperor demanded his afterlife transport be as flawless as his ego. Even the horses' manes ripple with anatomical precision, their veins visible beneath bronze skin. This level of detail suggests something unsettling. Qin might have feared the afterlife would judge him as harshly as he judged the living. Today, these chariots sit in a climate-controlled museum, their mercury-gilded surfaces still gleaming after 2 millennia. They're more than archaeological wonders. They're time capsules of a ruler who tried to engineer immortality itself. Every gear, every hinge whispers the same relentless question. If Qin could bend bronze to his will, why not eternity? Beyond the ranks of soldiers, the Terracotta Army complex holds unexpected figures that shatter our assumptions about Qin's afterlife vision. Tucked away in a separate pit stand terracotta acrobats frozen mid-handstand, their arms sinewy with tension, backs arched in impossible contortions. Nearby, musicians cradle delicate clay instruments, bells, drums, even a vanished silk zither, their faces wrapped in performance. Then there are the bureaucrats seated solemnly with writing tablets, their postures radiating quiet authority. These aren't accidental additions, they're proof that Qin's underworld court required more than military might. The acrobats reveal a startling cultural contradiction. Qin's legalist philosophy despised frivolity, banning unproductive arts in life. Yet in death, he commissioned entertainers to perform eternally. This paradox suggests the emperor's spiritual beliefs overrode his political doctrines. Ancient Chinese texts describe the afterlife as a mirror of earthly existence, a place where feasts needed music and souls craved diversion. The acrobats' muscular realism hints they were modeled on actual performers, perhaps favorites from Qin's court. Their pit's location, near the tomb's pleasure quarters, according to radar scans, implies these figures weren't just decorative. They were stationed to provide perpetual amusement for an emperor who denied himself such luxuries in life. More intriguing are the bureaucrats, their presence confirming Qin's afterlife was no warrior's paradise, it was a functioning state. Each clerk's tablet bears faint indentations, suggesting they once held bamboo slips inscribed with ghostly paperwork. One figure's shoulder still carries a worn patch where a fabric insignia might have marked his rank. These details expose Qin's deepest fixation. Control couldn't exist without administration. Just as his real empire relied on standardized laws and meticulous records, his spirit court needed scribes to enforce order. Some scholars argue these officials were meant to manage the vast terracotta population, tallying supplies or mustering clay troops. Others see them as celestial diplomats, negotiating with gods and ancestral spirits on Qin's behalf. The musicians introduce another layer. Their instruments form a complete ensemble, capable of performing the ceremonial music central to imperial rituals. Bronze bells found nearby still produce clear tones, their scales matching Zhou dynasty melodies. This wasn't background entertainment, it was the soundtrack of legitimacy. In ancient Chinese cosmology, proper music maintained harmony between heaven and earth. By burying these performers, Qin ensured his post-mortem reign would resonate with cosmic approval. The inclusion of a zither player is particularly telling. Historical records mention Qin keeping a zither by his bedside. Its replication in clay suggests a personal comfort he wished to carry beyond death. Together, these non-combatants paint a startling revision of the afterlife's hierarchy. The warriors dominate numerically, but the artisans, officials, and entertainers reveal Qin's understanding that eternity required balance. An empire, even a spectral one, couldn't survive on swords alone. It needed accountants to track phantom grain stores, musicians to sanctify unending ceremonies, and acrobats to ward off the crushing boredom of immortality. This diversity hints at a vulnerability rarely associated with the tyrannical emperor. Perhaps even Qin Shi Huang feared that without these careful recreations of life's richness, eternity would become a hollow victory. The Terracotta Army's true genius lies not in its martial spectacle, but in its quiet acknowledgement that to conquer death, one must first remember how to live. The Terracotta Army's staggering scale becomes even more remarkable when compared to the tomb figures of later dynasties. Take the Han Dynasty, which ruled China just after Qin's collapse. Their emperors, too, buried terracotta armies, but these were miniature, often standing no taller than a foot. The Yongling Museum displays thousands of these tiny nude figurines, their arms once crafted from wood that rotted away, leaving only slender clay torsos. While charming in their own right, they lack the visceral impact of Qin's life-sized warriors. The difference isn't just artistic, it's a window into shifting philosophies. Han rulers opted for symbolism over realism, prioritizing ritual function over grandeur. Their figurines were mass-produced with cookie-cutter molds, a far cry from the individualized faces of Qin's soldiers. Yet the Han's approach reveals a pragmatic lesson learned from Qin's excesses. Building an army of 8,000 life-sized figures nearly bankrupted the Qin dynasty, fueling the rebellions that toppled it. The Han's scaled-down versions achieved the same spiritual purpose, serving the emperor in death without draining the treasury. Their nude figurines, though less imposing, held deeper symbolic meaning. Stripped of armor and weapons, they represented the emperor's servants in their purest form, emphasizing humility rather than militarism. Some scholars argue this shift reflected Confucian ideals, replacing Qin's legalist brutality, where even in death, hierarchy mattered more than raw power. But the most striking contrast lies in craftsmanship. Qin's artisans labored for decades on anatomical precision, every tendon, every fingernail rendered with obsessive detail. Han figurines, while finely made, focused on expressive gestures rather than realism. Their faces, though standardized, convey warmth and personality through subtle paintwork. This wasn't a decline in skill but a redefinition of purpose. Where Qin sought to intimidate, the Han sought to harmonize. Even their arrangement differed. Han figures cluster in tableau of daily life, servants preparing feasts, musicians mid-song rather than battle formations. The Yongling figurines add another layer of mystery. Unlike Qin's warriors, many were originally dressed in silk robes, long since decayed, and their nudity was never meant to be seen. This suggests the Han viewed tomb figures as sacred but transient vehicles for the soul rather than eternal monuments. Qin's army, by contrast, was built to last, its very permanence a challenge to time itself. What emerges isn't just a tale of two dynasties but two visions of immortality. Qin's Terracotta Legion screams defiance, a declaration that not even death would diminish his might. The Han's figurines whisper acceptance, embracing the cyclical nature of existence. One thing's certain, no ruler before or since dared to dream as big as Qin Shi Huang. His army remains unmatched, a solitary colossus in the history of burial art, reminding us that ambition, unchecked by pragmatism, can sculpt both wonders and ruin. The moment archaeologists lifted the first terracotta warrior from its burial pit, an invisible clock started ticking, one that threatens to erase the army's original brilliance forever. When these clay soldiers were sealed underground over 2 millennia ago, they were vibrant with color-crimson robes, emerald sashes, even delicate pink lips. But exposure to modern air triggers a horrifying transformation. Within minutes, the ancient lacquer beneath the paint starts to curl and flake, taking the pigments with it like delicate skin peeling from a sunburn. This chemical reaction has already stripped most warriors to their muted clay forms, leaving behind only ghostly traces of their former radiance. The irony is painful. After surviving 2,000 years in darkness, these masterpieces are vanishing before our eyes because we dared to uncover them. To combat this crisis, scientists have turned the excavation site into what's essentially an emergency room for terracotta warriors. The Terracotta Warrior Hospital, as researchers call it, is a high-tech facility where every recovered fragment undergoes triage. Some pieces are bathed in a cocktail of preservatives to stabilize the lacquer, while others are sealed in humidity-controlled displays that mimic their original buried environment. One groundbreaking technique involves injecting a strengthening compound directly into the ancient paint layers, a delicate process likened to performing microsurgery on a coma patient. Even with these measures, only about 1 in 10 warriors retains visible color when unearthed, turning every excavation into a race against chemistry itself. Meanwhile, 3D laser scanning has become archaeology's most powerful ally. Teams create millimeter-perfect digital replicas of each warrior before they're even fully excavated, capturing details that might be lost during preservation. These scans don't just document the statues, they're helping solve centuries-old puzzles. By virtually reassembling shattered armor plates or comparing facial features across thousands of warriors, researchers have discovered that the army's artisans worked in assembly lines with different workshops specializing in specific body parts. Some scans even reveal fingerprints left in the clay, the actual marks of a Qin dynasty craftsman, preserved like a whispered signature across time. The conservation challenges extend beyond chemistry. Tourism brings vibrations from foot traffic that subtly shift the fragile earth beneath the pits, while humidity from visitors' breath encourages mold growth on the statues. Solutions range from the simple installing vibration dampening walkways to the futuristic, like AI monitoring systems that predict which warriors are most at risk of crumbling. There's poetic justice in this struggle. Qin built his army to defy time, and now, 2,000 years later, we're using every tool at our disposal to honor that ambition. The warriors may have been meant for eternity, but preserving them requires acknowledging just how fragile eternity really is. Perhaps the greatest revelation from these efforts isn't technological but philosophical. Each flake of preserved paint forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about ancient China. Those vibrant colors weren't just decoration, they were a language. The purple accents on officers' armor, made from rare synthetic pigments, proclaimed status more loudly than any insignia. The turquoise inlaid in cavalry horses' harnesses mirrored real-life regalia described in long-lost texts. Even the warriors' pink ears and ruddy cheeks, now visible under ultraviolet light, suggest they were painted to look alive, as if Qin believed color could animate clay in the afterlife. This race against decay has birthed an unexpected silver lining collaboration. German chemists work alongside Chinese archaeologists. American conservators share nano-laser techniques with Japanese historians. The Terracotta Army, created to serve one man's ego, has become a global mission to salvage humanity's shared heritage. Every warrior saved is a victory, but the battle is far from over. Underground, thousands more wait in the dark, their colors still pristine for now. The question isn't just how to preserve them, it's whether we should dig them up at all or leave these silent soldiers to the one environment that's kept them safe for centuries, the earth itself. The allure of the Terracotta Army has spawned a shadowy underworld, an illegal trade in counterfeit warriors that preys on collectors desperate to own a piece of history. On the black market, realistic replicas crafted by skilled forgers fetch staggering sums, some selling for over $100,000 to unsuspecting buyers who mistake them for looted originals. These fakes aren't crude imitations either. Modern artisans study centuries-old techniques, using the same local clay and handmade tools to mimic the warriors' textures, even aging them with acid washes and burial in controlled conditions to replicate millennia of patina. One notorious forger was caught after experts noticed his creations had a flaw too perfect. Each statue's ears bore identical creases, a telltale sign of mass production hidden beneath faux weathering. Museums employ forensic science to weed out these counterfeits. X-ray fluorescence scanners detect modern pigments in paint layers, while thermoluminescence dating measures when the clay was last fired, exposing fakes baked in ovens rather than ancient kilns. But the most fascinating authentication tool might be the warrior's fingerprints. Archaeologists have catalogued over 700 distinct fingerprints left by Qin dynasty craftsmen in the original clay. When a suspicious statue surfaces, analysts compare its prints to this database. If there's no match, the warriors are fraud. Tourists, too, have fueled this underground market, sometimes with disastrous consequences. In 2007, a German visitor was arrested trying to smuggle a warrior's head fragment out in his luggage, believing it held mystical powers. He wasn't alone. Local vendors near the site often sell authentic pottery shards, though most are clever fakes. But the real curse might be the legal fallout. Chinese authorities impose severe penalties for trafficking cultural relics, including lengthy prison sentences. Some superstitious buyers claim the stolen fragments bring misfortune, reporting bizarre accidents or financial ruin after acquiring them. Whether by karma or coincidence, these stories only deepen the warrior's mystique. The darker irony, while modern forgers painstakingly recreate the warriors, they're actually preserving ancient methods that might otherwise be lost. Some replicas are so precise they've been mistakenly displayed in small museums until specialists spot subtle anachronisms like incorrect armor ties or hairstyles from the wrong dynasty. This cat-and-mouse game between forgers and scholars reveals an uncomfortable truth. The Terracotta Army's legacy isn't just about the past. It's a living puzzle where authenticity and deception are locked in an eternal battle, much like the warriors themselves were meant to be. The discovery of the Terracotta Army didn't just rewrite history books, it transformed a quiet corner of China's Shaanxi province into a global phenomenon. Xi'an, once known mainly for its ancient city walls and Muslim quarter, now draws over 4 million visitors annually, all eager to stand in the presence of Qin Shi Huang's clay legions. Local farmers who once tilled wheat fields have become tour guides, their homes converted into guest houses. The economic ripple effect is staggering. Souvenir shops peddle miniature warriors, from jade replicas to bobblehead dolls, while luxury hotels tower over excavation sites. But this tourism boom comes at a cost. The sheer volume of visitors, sometimes 50,000 a day, has forced authorities to implement timed tickets and glass barriers to protect the fragile pits from breath moisture and camera flashes. Pop culture seized on the warrior's mystique almost immediately. They've starred in blockbusters like The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, where Jet Li's cursed emperor animates his terracotta army to conquer the modern world. Video games like Civilization and Assassin's Creed feature them as unlockable units or plot devices, while anime and comics reimagine them as everything from mecha warriors to supernatural guardians. This global fame has a dark side. Hollywood's dramatizations often overshadow the real archaeology, leaving audiences convinced the warriors were meant to come alive rather than serve as ritual symbols. Even the term Terracotta Army itself is a Western simplification. The Chinese name, Bing Ma Yong, translates more accurately to soldier and horse figures, stripping away the militarized exoticism foreign media favors. Yet nothing sparks debate like the ethics of mass tourism. Conservationists warn that constant foot traffic vibrates the delicate earth beneath the pits, risking structural damage. In 2018, a tourist famously broke into a restricted area to take selfies, knocking over and shattering a warrior's thumb, an incident that went viral and ignited outrage. Some scholars argue the site should adopt the Lascaux Caves model, where the original is closed to the public and visitors see only flawless replicas. Others counter that restricting access would gut local livelihoods and disconnect people from history's tangible magic. The warrior's cultural weight stretches beyond economics or entertainment. For China, they're both a point of pride and a political tool, a visible reminder of the nation's ancient unity under centralized rule, subtly echoing modern ideologies. Abroad, they've become shorthand for China itself, appearing in everything from diplomatic gifts to corporate logos. But perhaps their most unexpected legacy is how they've democratized archaeology. Unlike Egypt's pyramids or Peru's Machu Picchu, which were always monumental, the Terracotta Army was unearthed within living memory, making its discovery feel accessible, almost intimate. Every visitor who gazes at those silent ranks isn't just seeing an ancient wonder. They're witnessing a story still being uncovered, one painstaking brushstroke at a time. This tension between preservation and profit, authenticity and spectacle mirrors Qin Shi Huang's own contradictions. He built an empire on control, yet couldn't regulate his obsession with immortality. Now his clay soldiers face a different kind of battle, surviving the weight of their own fame. Whether they endure as cultural icons or crumble under the spotlight depends on choices we make today, choices that, like the warriors themselves, will echo far into the future. DNA doesn't lie, and the bones buried near the Terracotta Army reveal a brutal truth about who built Qin Shi Huang's underground empire. Genetic analysis of worker skeletons uncovered in mass graves around the mausoleum site tells a story of forced migration on an unimaginable scale. These weren't local laborers. Mitochondrial DNA tests show individuals from at least 7 distinct regions across ancient China, some hailing from territories over 800 miles away. Bone isotopes paint an even starker picture. Many workers had diets rich in millet, a staple of northern provinces, while others showed signs of rice-heavy southern nutrition. This wasn't voluntary employment, it was a coerced workforce, uprooted from conquered lands and marched to the emperor's tomb under guard. Forensic anthropologists found further evidence in the skeletons themselves: compression fractures from carrying heavy loads, spinal deformities from years of crouching in cramped kilns, and even teeth worn down from chewing gritty, rationed grain. These silent bones confirm historical records of Qin's draconian labor policies, where conscription quotas demanded 1 in 10 peasants from every village serve on imperial projects. The workers' origins weren't the only revelation hidden in their remains. Lead poisoning traces found in multiple skeletons point to another grim reality: mercury exposure. Some bones contain concentrations 50 times higher than normal, likely from processing cinnabar ore for the tomb's infamous mercury rivers or handling toxic pigments during warrior production. This aligns with accounts of laborers working in hazardous underground workshops, where ventilation was non-existent and life expectancy shockingly low. Archaeologists estimate the death toll from the tomb's construction could have reached 70,000, with mass graves still being discovered in nearby fields. Yet amidst this horror, DNA also reveals unexpected connections. Some skeletons share genetic markers with modern ethnic minorities like the Yi and Qiang, groups once marginalized by Qin's regime. Their presence in the workforce suggests the emperor's reach extended even to communities on the empire's fringes, pulling them into his grand design whether they willed it or not. While bones reveal the human cost, chemistry exposes the Terracotta Army's dazzling cosmopolitan origins. Advanced spectroscopic analysis of the warriors' surviving pigments reads like a map of ancient trade routes. The vibrant blues adorning officers' armor, ground lapis lazuli from Afghanistan's Badakhshan mines, transported along Proto-Silk Road networks centuries before Marco Polo. The rich cinnabar reds, mined from mercury-rich deposits in Hunan province, then carried over mountain passes by ox cart. Even more surprising are the rare Han purple and Han blue pigments, synthetic compounds not found in nature, requiring technical knowledge possibly borrowed from Egyptian or Mesopotamian alchemists. These pigments didn't just appear magically in Qin's workshops. Their presence proves sophisticated supply chains and diplomatic ties stretching thousands of miles, all marshaled to satisfy one man's obsession with color. The most poignant discovery lies in the paint itself. Raman microscopy, a technique that identifies molecules by their light signatures, reveals something startling about the artisan's methods. Pigments were mixed with animal glue and applied over multiple layers of lacquer derived from toxic rose trees, a technique requiring precise timing to prevent cracking. Fingerprints preserved in these layers show children as young as 12 participated in the painting, their tiny ridges pressed alongside adults. This wasn't just a workforce, it was generations bound together in a monumental, lethal task. These scientific insights demolish old assumptions about the Qin dynasty's isolation. Far from being an insular empire, Qin's China was already tapping into global networks, trading for exotic materials while exporting its own innovations. The warriors' lapis lazuli connects them to the same Afghan mines that supplied Tutankhamun's funeral mask. Their synthetic pigments mirror experiments in Alexandria's labs. Yet this multicultural exchange came at a devastating human price, one written in lead-poisoned bones and children's fingerprints frozen under layers of pigment. The Terracotta Army's brilliance wasn't just born from Chinese soil. It was forged by forced hands from distant lands, colored by minerals ripped from foreign mountains, and sealed with the breath of workers who never saw their homes again. Science has given these forgotten voices a way to speak across millennia, and their story is far darker than the warriors' stoic faces suggest. Consider the Terracotta Army not just as a spiritual guard, but as the ultimate propaganda tool, a stone-cold warning carved in clay. Emperor Qin Shi Huang didn't just conquer China's warring states, he crushed them, executing rivals and burning books that challenged his rule. In this light, the army's sheer scale takes on a darker purpose. 8,000 soldiers standing eternally at attention wasn't just about the afterlife, it was a message to the living. Dissent would be met with overwhelming force, even in death. Historical records describe how Qin's real-world tactics mirrored this intimidation. After unifying China in 221 BCE, he ordered weapons confiscated from defeated states and melted into colossal bronze statues, a physical erasure of resistance. The Terracotta Army, with its meticulously arranged ranks, echoed this performative dominance. Each pit was strategically placed near the emperor's tomb, visible to workers and officials during construction, as if to remind them of the price of disloyalty. Imagine being a laborer hauling clay under the watchful eyes of these frozen soldiers, knowing they symbolized an emperor whose grip extended beyond the grave. The timing is telling. Qin's reign was riddled with assassination attempts and rebellions. The army's construction coincided with his most paranoid decrees, like the infamous burning of books and burying of scholars, where dissenting intellectuals were executed and their texts destroyed. Some scholars argue the Terracotta Army's uniformity wasn't just artistic, it was ideological. Just as Qin standardized weights, currency, and even axle widths across his empire, his clay troops embodied rigid conformity. Their identical stances and weapons visually reinforced his legalist philosophy. Individual will must bow to centralized control, yet the propaganda may have backfired. The workforce's brutal conditions revealed by mass graves near the site fueled resentment that erupted into revolt after Qin's death. Ironically, the very monument meant to deter rebellion became a symbol of oppression that helped spark its collapse. The Han dynasty that followed learned this lesson well, opting for smaller, symbolic tomb figures that wouldn't incite the same fury. The soldiers' eastern positioning adds another layer. They face the lands Qin conquered as if eternally guarding against resurgence from those territories. This wasn't just spiritual logistics, it was psychological warfare. Even in defeat, rival kingdoms would know their vanquisher's gaze never wavered. The Terracotta Army, then, wasn't merely an archaeological marvel, it was the world's first monumental billboard, broadcasting a message as clear today as it was 2 millennia ago. Cross this emperor, and even time won't erase your consequence. Among the wildest myths surrounding the Terracotta Army is the persistent rumor that each warrior's face was cast from a living soldier, a ghoulish notion that Qin Shi Huang had his troops pressed into clay molds like human wax figures. While the idea makes for gripping storytelling, science tells a different tale. CT scans of the warriors reveal hollow interiors with coiled clay layers, a far cry from solid casts taken from flesh and blood subjects. Even more telling are the variations in facial structure. Some warriors sport distinctly non-Chinese features like high cheekbones and deep-set eyes, suggesting artists drew inspiration from the empire's diverse ethnic groups rather than specific individuals. The truth is both more mundane and more impressive. These were master sculptors working from memory and imagination, not some macabre assembly line of death masks. Then there's the legend of the Night Watch, claims that the warriors awaken after dark to patrol the tomb complex, their stone limbs grinding to life under moonlight. This fantastical idea gained traction partly because the site's security guards reported hearing strange noises, which investigators later traced to temperature shifts causing clay fragments to expand and contract. Ground-penetrating radar has mapped every inch of the pits without detecting hidden mechanisms, and infrared cameras show no anomalous heat signatures. The warriors' construction further debunks the myth. Their solid legs and hollow torsos couldn't support movement even if they were rigged with internal hinges. Perhaps the most persistent fiction involves hidden curses. After the 1974 excavation, rumors spread that several archaeologists had died mysteriously, their fates sealed by disturbing the emperor's rest. In reality, the original excavation team lived full lives, with lead archaeologist Zhao Kangman passing away in 2018 at age 82. The curse narrative likely stems from Western fascination with Egypt's King Tut, a cultural projection onto China's own ancient rulers. Even the warriors' colors have been misunderstood. Some claim they were originally painted white to resemble ghostly apparitions, but pigment analysis proves otherwise. The lacquer undercoat was black, making the vibrant hues pop, a far cry from any spectral palette. These misconceptions reveal more about our modern fascinations than historical reality. The Terracotta Army doesn't need supernatural embellishment to captivate. Its true power lies in the very human hands that shaped it, leaving behind not curses or magic, but an indelible mark of artistry and ambition. Beneath the guarded earth where the Terracotta Army stands, Emperor Qin's untouched tomb waits like a time capsule sealed for over 2 millennia. The temptation to excavate is overwhelming. This could be the greatest archaeological reveal of our lifetime, but the risks are just as staggering. Traditional digging could destroy fragile artifacts or unleash deadly mercury vapors still lingering from those ancient rivers of liquid metal. So scientists are turning to cutting-edge alternatives that would make Qin himself marvel. Robotic probes small enough to navigate tomb corridors without disturbing a grain of dirt, muon scanners that use cosmic rays to map hidden chambers in 3D, even artificial intelligence trained to predict where the most valuable relics might lie based on subtle patterns in ground-penetrating radar data. One ambitious proposal involves nanobot archaeology, swarms of microscopic cameras injected into the tomb through natural fissures, transmitting images of the interior like exploratory surgery for history. Another team is developing laser spectroscopy tools that can analyze pigments and materials through solid walls, potentially revealing tomb murals or texts without physical contact. The most tantalizing possibility, hyperspectral imaging that might detect the faintest traces of ink on bamboo slips, potentially recovering lost Qin dynasty records buried with the emperor. Imagine uncovering legal codes, military tactics, or even personal diaries that rewrite everything we know about China's first unification. But technology alone can't solve the ethical dilemma. Some argue the tomb should remain sealed out of respect for the dead, or as a hedge against our own hubris. When King Tut's tomb was opened in the 1920s, rushed excavations caused irreparable damage to organic materials that could have been preserved with modern techniques. A growing movement suggests waiting until science advances further, perhaps another 50 years, when non-invasive methods might render physical digging obsolete. Others counter that climate change and seismic activity could damage the tomb before we ever see inside, making controlled exploration the lesser risk. The Terracotta Army's role in this future discovery could shift dramatically with new findings. Right now, we see them as guardians of the tomb's eastern approach. But if scans reveal similar pits on other sides, it may prove they're part of a vast celestial pattern, positioned to mirror constellations or sacred geography. Chemical analysis of the warriors' clay might trace their origins to specific regions, revealing which conquered territories were forced to contribute materials, adding new layers to our understanding of Qin's oppressive logistics. Even the weapons they once held could hold clues. Detecting residue from poison or rare alloys might confirm ancient accounts of enchanted armaments. Perhaps most thrilling is the chance to solve the army's biggest mystery: function versus symbolism. If the tomb contains administrative records, we might find direct evidence of the artisan's instructions. Were the warriors meant to be spiritually animated protectors, or merely a grandiose imitation of imperial power? The answer could reshape how we interpret similar finds worldwide, from Egypt's Ushabti figurines to Japan's Haniwa tombs. Every unopened chamber whispers potential paradigm shifts, not just about Qin's China, but about how ancient civilizations universally grappled with mortality and legacy. For now, the tomb remains archaeology's ultimate teaser trailer. We've seen the supporting cast, the Terracotta Army, in all its splendor, but the protagonist's final act is still locked away, waiting for technology and courage to converge. When that day comes, it won't just be a hole in the ground being opened. It'll be a portal to the mind of an emperor who shaped history, then tried to outwit death itself. Until then, the silent warriors keep their vigil, guarding secrets even they weren't meant to understand. So where does this leave us? After all these centuries, after the excavations and the scans and the countless theories, the Terracotta Army still guards its secrets as fiercely as it once guarded its emperor. The afterlife army theory holds weight: 8,000 soldiers, armed and ready, positioned to defend Qin Shi Huang in the spirit realm. But then there are the spiritual guardians, those who believe the warriors weren't just soldiers, but mediators between worlds, their individualized faces serving as vessels for communication with the divine. And let's not forget the political statement angle, that this sea of clay was never about protection at all, but intimidation, a chilling reminder to the living and the dead alike that Qin's authority was eternal. Each theory is compelling in its own right. The afterlife argument fits with Qin's obsession with immortality, his desperate attempts to cheat death with elixirs and potions. The spiritual guardian idea aligns with ancient Chinese beliefs in the supernatural, where the dead required guides and intermediaries, and the political angle. That's pure Qin, a man who built his reign on control, who erased history when it suited him, and who would absolutely use his own burial site as one final act of propaganda. But here's the twist: the truth might be all of them at once. Human motivations are rarely simple, and Qin Shi Huang was nothing if not complex. Maybe the warriors were soldiers, guardians, and a warning, all rolled into one. Or maybe we'll never know for sure. After all, the tomb itself remains sealed, its deepest truth still locked away, and perhaps that's the point. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to endure, to keep us questioning, to remind us that history isn't just about answers, but about the stories we tell along the way. So what do you think? After everything we've uncovered, after all the clues and contradictions, which theory speaks to you? Was the Terracotta Army an eternal battalion, a bridge between worlds, or the ultimate flex of imperial power? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the most fascinating part of history isn't just discovering the truth, but hearing how each of us pieces it